and welcome everyone to my channel GNOSIS IT Training. For those of you who haven't already subscribed to my channel or are not aware of it, you can have a look at the link in the description below and subscribe to it. So the reason I created this video is I wanted to discuss interviewing etiquettes and the frequently asked interviewing questions when you apply for a position in an IT organization or a software related firm. So in my last 16 years in the IT world, I must have interviewed hundreds of IT professionals ranging from developers to technology architects. I have a questionnaire of 200 plus questions for different technologies like in front-end Angular, HTML, CSS, Angular JS, nodejs, reactjs, for backend core Java, J2EE, design patterns, architecture frameworks like Spring, Hibernate, cloud platforms like AWS, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, Microsoft Azure, DevOps, CICD, so on and so forth. So I wanted to discuss these questions with you, how to answer those correctly, what are the common mistakes which generally candidates make, and what are the do's and don'ts. So before you apply for a position, first of all, you need to understand what is the recruitment process. So the way it works is whenever a new project arrives, the project team raises a request with the recruitment team. For example, we need 50 Java J2EE developers. Then the recruitment team goes into the market or on the job portals and starts hunting for those positions. Now, for a given requirement, there could be multiple different job descriptions. For example, for a Java J2EE developer, there could be different JDs like a front-end developer, back-end developer, or a full-stack developer. Again, in front-end developer, there could be one JD which needs only HTML, CSS. There could be another which needs Angular, Node.js, reactjs, or mean stack. Similarly, for backend, one JD might need just core Java data structures. The other JD might need frameworks like Spring, Hibernate. The other might need Java plus experience with cloud platform. Full stack position might need knowledge of some or all of these subjects. So before you apply for a position, you need to check your fitment, whether this job description matches your current profile or the profile which you are aspiring for. Do not apply for a position just out of peer pressure or because your colleagues and friends are applying for a position, or because a recruiter contacted you, or because you're getting a good compensation. Go for something which you are passionate about and which you are good at. Moreover, it is not necessary for you to be an expert in all the technologies or all the subjects. It's next to impossible. But you should be a jack of all and master of some. So we call it T people in our language. So just like the horizontal bar of the T, character T, you should have a high level knowledge of all the subjects or the topics under a given technology. For example, if we speak about front end, you should have a high level knowledge of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Jquery, Angular, AngularJS, React, Node, things like that. If we talk about Java, you should know core Java, advanced Java, Spring, Hibernate, and different frameworks. Just a high level knowledge, T. Now, you should have in-depth knowledge of a couple of topics, just like the vertical bar of the T. So yeah, you might not know all the frameworks, but at least one framework, maybe Spring or Hibernate or core Java, you should be an expert at. So the next most important thing is your resume. A resume is your first impression to the interviewer, so it should look professional. It should be concise and precise. Try to keep it to one page. If you worked on several projects, try to limit it to 2 or 3 pages, but not more than that. The first page should have a summary, and the summary should highlight your professional achievements. It should highlight the technologies which you worked on, your current role, and any awards or recognitions. After the summary, you should begin with the project. Begin with the latest project or the last project which you worked on. Inside the project, highlight the domain, the technologies which you worked on, and the roles and responsibilities. The project description is not so important, so one line of project description should be okay. Now, once you are in the interview, the most important thing is your hygiene or the etiquettes. So the interviewer is not just judging you on your technical skills, but also on the behavioral or the soft skills. So it is very important that you're looking sharp in the interview. I have observed some candidates appearing on a video interview in shorts or t-shirts. That really doesn't give a very good first impression. So try to dress up professionally. A collared t-shirt or a shirt should be okay. Always begin with a smile and a greeting, and then with your introduction. Limit your introduction to the professional details, the projects which you worked on, and any other technologies and any certifications or awards. Personal details are not required here. Revise the subjects and your past experience before appearing for the interview, because it is very important that you be specific about your answers pertaining to the questions. Do not beat about the bush, because we interviewers have a lot of topics to cover in a very short period of time in the interview, and there are other interviews lined up. So if you're not able to answer a given question in a stipulated period of time, you might lose a point there. So always brush up the questions and your past project experience. Throughout the interview, keep an optimistic and cooperative attitude that will show that you are a good team player. And lastly, do not get disheartened if you are not selected for a position. It most likely doesn't have anything to do with your abilities. It most likely could be a fitment issue. So the skills required for that project or for that job description might be lacking in your skill set. So just go ahead and brush up those skills, do some hands-on practice, or apply for a different job description which matches with your current profile. Now let me start discussing the frequently asked questions, or the questions which I ask during my interview. Now the list is huge, so I won't be able to cover it all in one video, but if you like this video, I'll come up with more such videos wherein I'll discuss more topics, more questions, and how to answer those correctly. So now let's begin with the questions which are asked in the interview, or which I generally ask. So I'll begin with the UI questions first. So under UI, first of all, I begin with the basic HTML related questions. So under HTML, for example, I could ask how many titles can a HTML page have inside its head. So the answer to that is 1. What happens if you enter multiple titles? Well, there is no error. The browser would still render your page correctly, but the HTML guidelines say that you should have only one title inside your head tag, because some legacy browsers might not be able to render it correctly. Second question which might come up is about the semantic elements, or the tags. For example, body is a semantic element. It suggests that this is a body and it should have an ending tag, right? /body. What happens if you do not enter a /body tag? Nothing happens, but again the guidelines say that the semantic element should be in pairs. The next question which might come up is the significance of lang equals en inside the HTML tag. So this lang equals en suggests that this HTML page is in the language English. So the answer to this question is the significance of en is required by lang attribute is required by search engines and the screen readers to interpret and parse this as an English HTML document. So for example, if some search engine is looking for a keyword, an English keyword, for example GNOSIS, and this English keyword is present in your document, and if you mention this as language equals en, it will search for your document, right? If you might have mentioned some other language, for example FR, which stands for French, then the English search engine might not search your document. The other question which might come up is what is doc type declaration required for, right? So the answer to this would be that doc type declaration suggests that this is the latest document. So basically the latest version of HTML is HTML5. So it suggests to the browser that the browser has to use all the features of HTML5. If you do not add this doc type declaration, some legacy browsers might not be able to use all the features of HTML5. It might not be rendered as you would have expected it to. Now let's come to the next topic in line would be CSS. So the interviewer might want to check your hands-on, and to check that he or she might ask you a question. A basic first question would be, how do you add style, or how do you add CSS to your HTML document, right? So the answer to that would be, there are three ways to add CSS: inline, internal, and external. So as you can see, the row which I have highlighted here, the first example I have put here is inline CSS. For example, you got a paragraph tag and you want to apply a style to it. So right beside the p tag, you add style equals, and then you specify the style. For example, color. So for color we have color, or for background we'll have background hyphen color and colon, and then the actual color. It could be a color code or the name of the color. So the reason it is called inline is because it is in line with the tag itself, right? So this is the this is how you explain your answer if the interviewer asks for it. If he or she doesn't ask for it, that's fine. You can just mention in inline, internal, and external. Now, how do you add internal CSS? It is also known as embedded CSS. So you add style tags inside your HTML document. And inside the style tags you start applying the style. So dot main here is nothing but a class. So first of all, you need to apply a class to a tag, and then you need to apply a style to that class. For example, you got a body and you apply a class equals main to that body, and now you want to set a background color of this entire body. Then you add a style tag here, and inside the style tag you specify dot main, and then you inside the curly braces you specify the style. So here I put text align equals center. So any tag which has a main class, its text would be aligned to the center. This is how you apply an internal CSS. That's the explanation of how to add a style. And then how to add an external CSS. So inside the head tag you have a link tag, you add a link tag, and inside the link tag you provide the reference or the href to your external CSS file. So here the test.css file will have all the styles, or all the all the styles for all the different tags and classes in your HTML, and that file has to be included in your HTML document where it is to be used. So these are the three different ways to add CSS to your document. So the next question that could be asked could be about Bootstrap. So the question could be, what is Bootstrap and what is it used for? So the answer to that would be, Bootstrap is a JavaScript library which provides you some ready-made functionalities and ready-made features which can be used out of box. You do not have to implement those. How to use Bootstrap in your project? You need to include bootstrap.min.js and CSS files inside your HTML document, and then you can start using the functionalities and features. The next question to check your hands-on could be, what were the different functionalities of Bootstrap you used in your past project. So the answer to that could be, by giving an example. For example, if you want to make a table responsive, so you can use the table hyphen responsive class, right? If you want to apply same look and feel to buttons as well as anchors and input elements, so you could use a .btn class provided by Bootstrap. Or if you want to make responsive buttons, then you can use .img hyphen responsive class of Bootstrap, so on and so forth. Now the next set of questions could be about JavaScript or Jquery. So in order to check your hands-on knowledge, the interviewer might ask you about Ajax requests in JavaScript. Generally I begin with this question. So you can look at the highlighted row here. The interviewer might ask you to explain how to make an Ajax call in JavaScript. So you can either explain it verbally, or you could, if there's a chat window or a whiteboarding available in your video interview or in your face-to-face interview, you can go ahead and write the code as well. So as you can see here, first of all you need to create a XML HTTP request object, and then you need to open the session by specifying the type of operation which you are performing, like get, put, post, delete, and then you need to specify the URL. once you open the session, now you need to send your request using .send, and then after that you need to register a callback function. So whenever you get a response, this function will be called, and inside this function you specify what you need to do with the response. So if you can see in this example, I have retrieved an element in my HTML with the ID of demo, and inside this HTML I am rendering the response text. Now similar question would be asked for jQuery. So the person might want to know your knowledge about other frameworks, other JavaScript frameworks. So you could mention jQuery is a JavaScript API which has got out-of-box functionalities. So it since you got ready-made functionalities, it's less line of code for you, and it is also browser independent. If you are asked to give an example, you could give an Ajax example, or if the interviewer particularly asks you to give an Ajax example, you can specify following example. For example, on button click, if the developer wants an Ajax request to be fired, so $button.click would have a function, and inside this function you'll fire the Ajax call. The syntax to fire the Ajax call is $.ajax, and so always remember, jQuery always has dollars. Inside this $.ajax you'll have a URL wherein you'll specify the HTTP URL, and then you'll also register a callback function. So here I have registered a success function. What do we need to do on success? So here on success I'm calling a function, and inside this function I am retrieving a div with the ID div1, and inside the div I am putting the result as an HTML. You can also register a callback function for error if there's something particular you need to do for error, and that is generally a good practice. Now some advanced questions might be asked, for example for a senior position, or for if the job description needs an expertise in JavaScript. So this is the question which I generally ask to check the basics, or the object-oriented knowledge of the interviewee. The question is, how do you implement a factory pattern or an abstract factory design pattern in JavaScript? So you could explain it like this. Let me open the file here. So as you can see here, JavaScript gives you functions. Using the functions you can implement or describe a factory pattern. Now JavaScript also gives you a class, but you can specify either of those in your interview. So first of all, you can begin with explaining what a factory pattern is. So factory pattern basically is a factory. It creates an object for you. So it's a factory of objects. So the benefit of factory pattern is that the calling function need not worry about the internal implementation. That is the job of the factory. All that it needs to do is specify or ask the factory to return an object, and the factory will create the object for you and return it to you. So how do you do it? First of all, the object in question has to be created as a function. So here I've created an example. In this example, employee is the object, and employee factory is the factory which returns this object. So both are functions, and inside the employee function I have a variable called name and a function called say. Now inside the employee factory I have a variable or a method or a function called create, and this function does nothing but returns a new employee, passing the attribute as name. So this is how an employee factory can be implemented. Similarly, I have a vendor and a vendor factory. It creates a vendor and a vendor factory in a similar fashion. And then finally I have a run function or the main function. So here two objects are created for the factory. One is for employee factory and the second is for vendor factory. Now I also create a variable of person. So this is an array which will store all the different persons. As you can see in this example, we have two type of persons. We have employee and vendor, and to create these two types of persons I am invoking the factory. So if you can see in this run method here, I am creating the first employee using employee factory dot create, and then I'm passing a name. So this will go in the create method of employee factory, passing the name. It will go into the function, it will create a new employee, passing the function to it. Similarly, I create another employee, I push both of them to my array. Similarly, I create two vendors and I push both of them inside my array. And then finally I'm just looping through the array and invoking the same method. So you can describe this method. It won't be possible for you to write down this entire piece of code, but you can describe this piece of code to explain how to create a factory pattern using JavaScript. So I'll cover other topics like AngularJS, Angular, reactjs, nodejs in my other videos. I hope you found this video to be useful and you liked it. So all the best for your interviews till we meet again. Goodbye.